Hello, everyone. This is Criminal Takes number one, our podcast with me, and I believe it is Postkanov. I always pronounce your
It i- it
your
i- it
YouTube
is
title.
it is Postnikov, but it's completely fine. I don't know why I picked such a difficult name, but hello guys, I'm the number two on this podcast, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that we got this together. I've really enjoyed your content for a long time. For people on my page, you should definitely go check him out. He makes a lot of good manga content, introduces people to a lot of new series, and has some pretty good analysis. And I really enjoy talking to him. So I'm glad to have him, do this with me. And just so you guys know, this is more of it's like a half discussion, half debate show. So, if you like that kind of thing, stick around. It might get a little contentious, but just know it's all in good fun. There's no bad blood here. And yeah, today the topic is Chainsaw Man. And so we're going to start by talking about the most recent chapter, the one that released today. And that's going to be chapter 154. And I just want to hear your thoughts on it just right off the bat.
To be honest, like this chapter, I found it to be quite interesting because I found it to have some twists about characters that I didn't expect, especially Fumiko's character. It kind of surprised me. I found this chapter to be also somewhat of a precursor for the actual plot that is going to be shown just after. I actually think that we are going to finally get into the serious moments of Chainsaw Man, finally, after so much time. And we're going to see some really like a lot of action scenes, a lot of golf stuff. And I'm really hyped for it. I found this chapter to be great. I found it to be really tense as well and announcing a lot
Yeah.
of new stuff. So yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to talk, I thought, I'm glad you brought up Famiko, because the way she disappeared, I really liked. It had that movie-esque-ness that like Fujimoto brings to the table, where like someone passes and she disappears, like something out of like Now You See Me or something. And so I really
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Fumiko's
it
character is
really
really
is.
interesting because she is a fan, but more than that, she's a monitor, and so I think she could be an antagonist to Denji and Nayuta going forward because, Nayuta has basically made her intentions clear that she sides with devils over humanity, which is a problem from a public safety perspective. And so I think there is this tension that's brewing, which is like, how is public safety going to deal with this threat that is, Nayuta? And, now that Denji has been essentially attacked by humans and his hand cut off, or he cuts off someone else's hands, is he going to now be seen as good to kill by the public safety? And now with the, obviously the death of Makima and I believe Kashibe is running things, I'm wondering how powerful public safety really is and if they have the personnel to really go after Chainsaw Man and Nayuta. So those are some of the things I'm looking forward to in the background because we haven't seen a lot of public safety outside of Yoshida. Do you have any
Exactly.
opinions on where that might go?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I completely agree with you with the fact that I would say that one of my disappointments with the series so far and this chapter was that we don't, we're still left in the dark about how public safety actually works. And ever since we saw Makima die and we suppose that Kishibe is now running things, I'm kind of sad that we haven't seen anything about him, anything related to him. We saw the hybrids, but we didn't see how public safety actually worked, who were the higher ups, or anything like that. Now, regarding that, I think that you're also right about what you're announcing. You're thinking is going to happen. I'm looking forward for the same things, basically. Looking forward to see as well some of the other hybrids, as well as Reze. I mean, come on, bro. I really want to see her. And I
Yeah.
mean, I'm like most of the community, right? We want to see Reze back. And it is something that is extremely hyped as well. And I think I don't know what you would think about that, but you know the movie that was announced for the bomb arc. What do you think if Fujimoto brings her back just around the time the movie gets released?
Ooh. Okay, this is my first criminal take. I think I'm not a huge Reese guy. I think she served her purpose, but I'm not like fiending to get her back. I think Reze is interesting because she kind of one of the things that Fujimoto does really well is when he reveals something, he's like usually we exist on the ground level, with Denji and pals, right? But when he reveals something, a lot of times it zooms out, like, oh, like there are governments involved, and there are people larger, that have stakes in these everyday interactions. And so I think he does a really good job of like zooming in and out. I think Reeves was one of the first times we really zoomed out to say, hey, like governments are really involved with these things at some level, which was kind of a lead up to the Gun Devil reveal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like Reese because she introduces a human element to the zooming out of other governments getting involved and him being an important target. But like just as a character, I didn't find her like crazy interesting simply because I just felt like she didn't her as a character like is interesting conceptually as like kind of a child soldier who's forced to get something out of Denji, but she's not interesting in like her personality, I guess. I mean their kiss and his subsequent like getting his tongue bit off is like a really funny scene, I'll give you that. But I think in general her characterization has not been very strong, and so I'm not like fiending to get her back. Obviously she is alive because she's a weapon, so I don't mind getting more information about her. I just hope when she comes back, we get to see more of her personality and maybe more of her background. And so those are kind of the things I'm looking for.
Yeah, I do understand why you're calling that one a criminal take here, because most people would obviously think that
Yeah, crucify me.
that you call her Reese, right? I call her like the
Yeah.
French way to pronounce it, so I'll call her Reese as well. She's to me she's a really nuanced character, but she didn't shine enough on the spotlight, and she had a whole arc for her, but then she just disappeared. And obviously I would like to see more of her, because we saw the reason why people want to see more of her right now is the fact that we saw the other weapons, all of them but not her, so it's just a teasing. Anyways, let's just go back to the chapter itself. And one thing I really wanted to talk about was Nayuta's situation. I think it is the main point right now that this chapter
Yeah.
engages what Nayuta will become in the following chapters and in the finality of Chainsaw Man as a whole. What does she represent to you?
So to me, Nayuda is kind of like the spoke at the hub of the, or like the wheel where all the spokes come out of. Like she's involved with public safety in the sense that they're watching her, right? And like she is the embodiment of Makima. But also she's connected to Fami and what she's got going on. And she's not necessarily like loyal to human beings, obviously. She sort of like sides with devils because like what was it? Humans are weak sauce, I think was the exact quote, if that was translated correctly. Um,
Something similar,
but
yeah.
also, she's involved with the human side of Denji. And so she's the only person who's sort of involved, like, with all the different characters and is kind of at the center of this battle that's going on for, like, how the world is going to shape up. I assume Fami wants to make the world more favorable for devils, but doesn't want, like, the entire world to be destroyed,
Mm-hmm.
which seems to be the main threat of the Death Devil. Or maybe she just doesn't want to be displaced. Well, Denji just wants to, at this point, wants to be Chainsaw Man, and she kind of has a place in that, and public safety just wants to keep him and her contained, so she has a piece in that. And so I think what these chapters point out is how Nayuta is a central figure in the Chainsaw Man universe. Like she's kind of been a background character, but really she is one of the characters that has like a piece of the pie and everything, which makes her interesting because now Fumiko has turned on her because she said she's going to side with humans, or side, excuse me, side with devils,
Yeah.
and almost threatened to kill her. And when Fumiko left, that kind of told me like, oh, Nayuta's on the hit list. Like Fami's goons are just straight out to kill her. And I think the saddest moment is when Denji just straight up abandons her, because I think abandon might be a strong word. I think he's lost it. I think, Pochita is still a devil. I think the contract where he always has to want more and to show him his dreams is corrupting him, because now his dreams are something that's like not actually beneficial for him. So I think he's telling Nayuta to scram simply to like protect her.
Yeah, and also something that I
But
wanted to point
yeah,
about Denji is the fact that he's still really young in the story, and he's also really disturbed by all the events that happened in the first part, but also the second part really recently. He's a troubled individual as a whole, so this reaction that he had doesn't surprise me. It could even be seen as a mental breakdown as well, and we had that in part one when he was kind of like depressed after Power's death, and when during the fight before at the McDonald's thing, the burger joint where Pochita took control of Denji's body basically and put the armor because Denji was just not there mentally. I think that Denji is could be broken, and Nayuta is an interesting element that could rather bring back Denji to his initial state if she's gone, and I would not like to see it turn that way where Nayuta just gets killed next chapter, and I probably don't think it's gonna happen, right? I don't think
no, I don't
Fujimoto
think
is
so.
going to just show us Nayuta getting headshot by a fucking Glock, and then it's the end of it. Because if that happens, first of all, he's a crazy genius. I would actually be so hyped if that happened, but then I don't see
I
how there's
agree.
I don't see how there's any going back from this. There is just a tragedy. Chainsaw Man just become a fucking tragedy, and there's no real point, and it was a waste of a character for Nayuta because, as you said, she has not seen a moment, and her characterization was not really detailed. Uh, she just has
Yeah, she's
started
sort
to
of
show.
mischievous,
Yes,
but
she
she's not.
yes she has
Yeah.
been on the spotlight, but really recently for a few chapters now.
And one of the things I like about her is she provides like insight into how devils actually work. Like I made a video about this where she says like fish swim, devils kill people. Like it's kind of in their nature. And I
Yeah,
think
she's the
like she
consciousness
gives a sense.
of a devil, basically, and
Yeah.
she expresses that, and it's something that I really wanted to see more in Chainsaw Man is the framework and behind the devils and how they think, how they express themselves. Because devils and human, what differentiates them besides the power, the abilities? There's the consciousness side of things, and Nayuta, as you said, is a perfect representation of that, of the conscious side of devils, how they think, how they see others. And that's an insight that we didn't see a lot. And losing her would be a waste in many aspects. So I don't think it's going to happen, right?
y- Yeah, I want to push something. I agree with everything you said. I think we're on the same page there. One thing I do want to ask you is if you thought the Nayuta Denji thing got resolved too fast, because Denji basically told her to screw off, and I thought like, oh, Denji is more Pochita than he is Denji right now. Like the part of him that his heart is actually like starting to actually corrupt him. But in this chapter, you kind of see a reversal of that where he's still caring about her and she's still caring about him. And like she's kind of like drawing him back in, like, no, you really do need me to save you. And like part of me feels like it got resolved too fast. I wanted Chainsaw Man to go like absolutely bonkers before they reunited. I wanted Asa to be the thing that like brought him back to his humanity, which would be the first genuine relationship. Like she genuinely likes him and she doesn't really have an ulterior motive. I mean, obviously Yoru has an ulterior motive, but she doesn't. And so I thought like she was going to be the thing that brought her back along with Nayuta, but now it seems like this might be being resolved faster than I wanted it to. I enjoyed the tension of like Chainsaw Man has lost it. I'm wondering if we've relieved that tension too fast. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I honestly don't think that the tension is relieved. I think it's building up to something even bigger. And I honestly think the way Fujimoto paneled this and has shown all of this whole framework of the events happening, the occurrence of the events has not been completed. I think like he's building up to something even bigger. And I do agree with you that it kind of feels a bit. I would say to me, it feels a bit rushed. It felt like as if we went through problem resolution without having some nuance, some details, and something that is quite uncommon with Fujimoto's writing, right? Uh, but I don't think that Fujimoto has lost it in terms of that. I think that
No.
he's preparing something bigger, And right now, I would just say let's just wait for more chapters to see if this is the resolution of things, or if this is just like to put us on the wrong side or the wrong way of thinking. And maybe we just need to wait for more chapters to actually see if Denji is actually back to normal or back to thinking about saving Nayuta again and thinking about her, you know?
Yeah, I think we need to see. Yeah, yeah, that's true because like what if Nayuda just gets shot in the next chapter and like Chainsaw Man turned his back on the one person who's willing to risk his life to save him, right? Like that actually escalates his madness to another level. Um, so like I agree with you that there is I think we might need to see a couple more chapters. I think maybe this is less of a critique and more of a concern. Like I hope
Exactly,
Fujimoto
exactly.
keeps this tension until the end. You know what I mean?
And I'm sure that he'll be pulling it off because he has done it countless
Because he's
times.
Fujimoto.
Yeah, it's not something that I'd be surprised to see happen, and it will probably happen that way. I think that we're just entering the really interesting part of this second part, and I'm really hyped for it so far. So now I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If you had to rate this chapter out of 10, what would you give it and why?
Ooh, that's a good question. And afterwards I want to hear your opinion.
Sure, sure.
Um I think I'm going to give it ooh, I think I'm going to give it an 8. And the
An
reason
8.
is because it has a lot of elements I really, really like, which is like that relationship between Nayuda and Denji. We really get to see that they do care about each other deeply, and that Nayuda is willing to like stick her neck out for Denji, and has like the hugs that like Pochita told Denji to give Nayuda are working. Like Makima did not care about Denji at all. Nayuda is willing to risk herself and in front of that mob to deal with that, right? I also
Mm-hmm.
find like the idea of the mob and the way it's going to like slowly turn Chainsaw Man against the crowd because they've lost their love for him. And part of the reason he wanted to be Chainsaw Man was to like connect to the world and be beloved. And now the moment he gets to become Chainsaw Man again, he's absolutely despised and like literally being destroyed by people, right?
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
also, I think the cliffhanger was really good because it
Yeah.
makes sense. It fits in with the natural progression. It didn't feel like ham-fisted in. And so I think the reason it's not like a 10 out of 10, like 5 out of 10 for me is average. So 3 out of 10 is like 3 deviations above average. So that's really, really good. Um I think the reason it's not a 10 out of 10 is because like I do want to see where that tension goes. Um I I found Fumiko's dialogue to be
I would say
a
janky.
little confusing.
it was
Janky. Janky might be the best word. Yeah.
it was weird to me. I'll let you finish and then I'll continue that. Yeah.
Like like you've seen Toy Story, right?
Yeah.
When like he drops Andy and he's like, I don't want to play with you anymore. Like Fumiko sounded
He
like that.
I don't want to play with Fumiko anymore. No, she said I don't want to play with Denji and you anymore. Like kind of shit like that.
Yeah. It
Nah, that,
sounded just like that. And I'm like, oh,
I was
okay. I mean, I
I
get the
felt better
point.
that Fujimoto actually said to Fumiko, "I don't want to play with you," and he just like ghosts her from the story. I will never see her again. That would be actually funny as fuck. All that build up
Dude,
about the character, that weird
I
ass
would actually be
character,
more annoyed if that was the case, just because I'm like,
the Jujutsu
why did we
Kaisen
have this
treatment.
lady? Sorry?
If the Jujutsu Kaisen treatment, if you've read JJK, basically there's so many characters that just that appear for a few chapters, and there's something that happens, they just get killed off, and we never hear about them again, or they just disappear and we don't know if they're dead or not. That's something about JJK, and maybe Fujimoto was pretty similar to Gege Akutami, the guy who wrote the JJK. Maybe he's actually taking notes on him, and he's actually gonna ghost Fumiko, but I highly doubt it. I think like
Yeah, shows
honestly,
up, gets slaughtered,
yeah,
refuses to elaborate, kind of thing.
yeah, that exactly. No, I agree with you on Fumiko. Now, are you finished about what you thought of this chapter?
Yeah, yeah, I want to hear your rating.
My rating would be honestly, I would say a 6 to maybe a 7, a light 7. I would say
With
like
5
enter the
being average?
yeah, with 5 being average.
Okay, okay, yeah.
The thing with this chapter, and one big miss that I think, I just don't understand the characterization of Fumiko. I just find it out of place, really, to have her be so concerned about. We saw her trying to help, wanting to help Denji, having this concern for Denji, and just now she just dumps Nayuta. Maybe there is a reason behind this characterization choice from Fujimoto, right? But something that I really disliked is just Fumiko's character. I love this character. It's more of a personal take. I really loved her as a character, and I thought that maybe should actually be like part of a new trio of Denji, Nayuta, and maybe Asa one day. Who knows? But the thing that kind of like pissed me off is just she just disappears and doesn't elaborate. And just I'm gone. And the situation was not that fucked up. She could have helped. Let's see, the last time Denji was at the karaoke thing, there were much more people. There were probably the same amount of people that lunged at him, and she didn't say anything. But now it's just normal people, and she's scared, and she just runs away, and that actually
I
really
think
pissed me off.
I think the only way the way I thought about it is I think what Fujimoto is trying to say is that Fumiko and public safety, like Nayuta is dead to them, and they don't mind if she dies. They're indifferent. They care about Denji. But when Nayuta said, like, I don't care about humans if they die, like,
It's
at
maybe a
that point, she
reflection.
kind
It's
of
a
became.
mm-hmm. At that
Sorry?
point. No, keep going, keep going. My bad.
Oh, at that point, it was kind of like excommunicado. You know what I mean? Like, she was left for dead. And so I think maybe that's what's trying to be conveyed is that public safety has basically marked Nayuta to die and not be protected anymore. And they're only interested in basically salvaging Denji. And so maybe that's what's happening. But that's just a guess that I think
No,
works better.
yeah, I think that works better. I think you're right on that, and maybe that works. That makes Fumiko's choice make sense then. But I probably would have liked to see her elaborate a bit more, and maybe it's Fujimoto's intent to make us hate her, because the way he actually
Yeah.
pointed out, it makes her really dislikable. Like, I don't want to like her anymore. I really don't want to see her face anymore, even though I really like this character for some reasons. uh, I just I'm kind of disappointed in it. But it's a good chapter. We've actually seen for the first time a moment where Nayuta is really in danger. So that's what I also really liked about this chapter. The moment about Fumiko I disliked, and also something that I didn't really understand is the thing. At the end there's like a guy that just carries Chainsaw Man, right, and runs away.
Yeah, that was being controlled by Nayuta, is what I understood.
Yeah. I think it's something like that, right? It's Nayuta that controls the thing, right? And then that's really good. But that's something that I wouldn't like be. Maybe I read the chapter too fast, yeah, because of the finger. Now I reread it. Okay, I'll change my rating. Just now. I'll put it at an 8 to a 9 because I didn't understand that part, okay? But I read it really fast.
No, it
So
was confusing.
the thing is that sometimes the art style, and we'll get to that later, is a bit janky, is a bit weird to look at, and the paneling as well, which was something really good with Fujimoto. I kind of disliked the paneling on this one chapter. It felt really messy, and I know the situation was messy, but I didn't like the way it was settled, and I had trouble understanding. But maybe I'm just a dumbass, and I don't know how to read mangas, which
No,
would be
no.
surprising. but and it's an occurrence that has been quite happen. It has been happening quite often, where I just read some chapters and I don't really understand what's happening. So that's why I don't think this is one of the best chapters that's been in the part two. For sure, this is not one of the best. I think it's just announcing something bigger than a big moment in the Chainsaw Man story. It's just a bridge to that, right? And it's
Yeah, these
also
are transition
yeah,
chapters.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
transition, right? So I can't think I could ever give more than a 10 out, more than a 9 or an 8 to a transition chapter. Even though it's well written as always, there are just some
No, I
things, the
agree. Yeah.
art, some ambiguity as well in the way the story is told, which I wouldn't be able to say it's a very good chapter.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think like the thing that confused me the most at the end last time was why the lady holding Nayuta back like punched a guy. I was like, what happened there? And then it's like, oh, it's the chains. But then I was like, okay, Fujimoto, you've taught us to think when you see a chain, it's being connected by Nayuta. But in these panels, I don't know if I just didn't notice it, but I didn't see any chains. And so when people just got like controlled, like without the visual cue of the chain, I got really confused. I was like, is the chain just something like she can see, but like isn't in reality a thing? Do you know what I'm
Yeah,
talking about?
yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's also something that's been kind of like appearing to be a bit of a miss with Fujimoto in this part is that sometimes there's less attention to details where it actually matters. You will have some details on the plants, for example. I don't know if you remember, but in some chapter we see the room of Denji and Nayuta, and we see the plants of both of them. They have some plant, and Nayuta's plant is dead or something like that. Whereas because she can't take care of it, and Denji's one is sprouting and everything, it's really nice. And like right now, when there are some ambiguity during the action scenes, which I didn't actually have with the first part. So I agree with you, and I think that maybe Fujimoto is just burned out at some point by doing all of this Chainsaw Man thing. And that's a good transition to
Yeah,
the
I was about to
second
say.
part of this discussion, of this podcast episode, where here we'll discuss, I'll let you say it.
Okay, so we're going to discuss if part 2 is as good as part 1. And so I think my position is that part 2 is as good as part 1. It's just different, and I think well, I'll make my argument later. And your position, if I understand it, is that there is a decline in quality. Would you like to define like what parts of the story you thought, or story, art, otherwise, is a decline? You know, like what do you
Yeah,
see as like losing
yeah.
quality?
So what I mean by losing quality is not an overall decline. I don't think that the story itself, the plot, or even the characterization has declined. I honestly think that one aspect that I've said like many times, even like during my review of this chapter, is that the art has been a bit weird sometimes. The pacing, if you're reading weekly, has also been a bit, I would say, boring to follow sometimes. And finally, I would also say that I've seen it on Reddit. Many people are unhappy about the breaks. The breaks between chapters are sometimes so long that you just lose the hype for the story. And the story is also slower in the second part, which means that this makes the community really divided. And it's been really showing on numbers as well, sales numbers, even the views on the videos for the movie trailers and everything. There is not much hype for Chainsaw Man these days. So I would say it's a decline in some selected areas like quality of art, pacing, and the breaks. Even though I understand about the breaks, it's just an opinion that is shared by me. It's not a huge thing that's really important, but I've seen it many times on the. Every time I go read the manga, I check the comments. There's always many people complaining about the breaks because the chapters feel so short. So that's what I meant by a decline.
Okay, so let me address each of those points maybe backwards, and let me know if I missed one.
All right.
So I think this is just a me thing. I don't really care whether or not like the fan base is like dying or growing, or the pacing like personally, I'd like the fan base to grow. Personally, I'd like the chapters every day so I could read them, right? Like in a row. But it actually doesn't like bother me that they have a bunch of stuff in between, or like have a bunch of time in between, or that sales numbers are going down. Like I think what here's my argument. I think part 1 had some really deep themes and interesting characters. I think part 2 is doing a lot more with the world building. Like for example, you have Fami, and you have to think a lot about like what are Fami's goals, you know, and like is she really fighting the Death Devil? Is she just trying to usurp them? What is her relation between her and Yoshida? How does Nayuta's nature react to all these things? Asa, her internal conflict in relation to Yoru and how that grows. Like a lot of these things happened in the quote unquote boring chapters, but I really liked the boring chapters. I thought they personalized things a lot. I think they pointed out the world building, and how there's a lot of different factions within this universe that are fighting against each other. And Fujimoto is trying to go after a more complex story. Like in the first part, we had Denji, gets basically adopted, and then he fights the Eternity Devil, and then, a bunch of people try to assassinate him. And then, like there's a little bit of world building. It's when you zoom out and you see a little bit like we're talking about with Reze, we see that, but in general, it's pretty linear and there aren't a whole lot of factions, right? Like, you could define everything as basically the Makima faction and the anti-Makima faction in the story. And it doesn't get much deeper than that. I think with this story, you actually do have a lot of people pulling and pushing in a lot of different ways. And there's a lot more emotional weight to a lot of things they're doing. Some of my favorite chapters are the slow chapters, like
Slice of
where
life
we get
chapters,
to.
the dates, for example.
Yeah, I like those chapters a lot. I think they really personalize these people. But I think, we all suffer from the reading comprehension devil and like the
It's a
normal
plague in the
shonen.
community.
Yeah. The like first of all, I don't think they actually understand what's happening and like they're like, "Well, I'm not interested in Yoshida and Fami cuz they're not like Pink Girl who's like dominating me. And also, there's not enough action." And like I get that sense when people say it's boring, it's like there weren't enough hijinks this week or there wasn't enough action this week or it doesn't feel like there's enough much happening. It's like, there is value in like looking into these characters' lives and like analyzing them. And that to me is as interesting as any of the drama stuff, if not more so. Like right now, Asa's my favorite character because I think she's the perfect foil for Denji. They
No,
both have a heart of a devil. They both are basically abandoned. And they both don't really have any good semblance of a relationship. Every relationship they've had in their life has been tainted. And the idea that these two people have actually like found a sort of like romance between each other, but everything in the world, including these factions, are kind of pulling them apart or at least pitting them together, at least aesthetically, is really interesting. But like, I think that gets lost because a lot of people just, want Chainsaw Man Go Burr chapters.
now
And
let me
so,
address that point that you just made.
okay, you go. I,
Yeah,
I spoke.
yeah, you spoke and you had what I wanted to say here is what is like to me, and that's only to me, and I'm gonna be the voice of the community, if you see what I mean. I've been spending a lot of
Okay,
time
yeah,
on the
yeah.
Chainsaw Man Reddit's subreddits, and I think community it plays an important part in shonens because without the community, the the manga wouldn't exist, right? Because
Yeah.
it gets just dropped, even if it's good quality. It has happened countless times with Shonen Jump. The community plays an important part there. What I think that people don't like it and come with the criticism is that Chainsaw Man just has lost some of its identity in the manga. Because I completely agree with you with the fact that Chainsaw Man has become so much more complex, has much more depth in the characterization and the world building. This whole part feels like there is so much more to tell. There is so many things that are building up, and we don't know where it is going. It's fascinating to read, and there are so many aspects that I love about the story myself. But then I just think about it, and I just ask myself, why did people fall in love with Chainsaw Man? Why did the majority of people just say, "Wow, Chainsaw Man is the bomb, bro. It's amazing. It's that manga that makes me feel things that I didn't know I could feel when reading a manga, and it gives me goosebumps to just watch some of those action scenes and watch them, like the reveal of Makima, seeing Aki's death and things like that. And to be honest, I don't know how I could feel the same in the second part, to be honest. If Asa dies, I wouldn't be as sad as when Power or Aki died. I think that one element that has been lost in the second part is the charisma that some characters had, and the presence, and also like how attached I was to them. In second part, I am
Mm.
attached to Denji and Nayuta somehow, but not that much. but Denji is the only character that we've seen. Yoshida is a creepy psychopath, and I like him a lot, but I have no attachment towards him. And in the first part, you had this whole thing with this whole dynamic with Power, Aki, and Denji that is pretty classic in shonens. Let's just say it. But the way Fujimoto wrote it made it really nice. This whole chaotic
Yeah.
siblings energy was something that I really missed. And even though objectively, I will use the word objectively, which I don't think is the correct word to use here because it's always subjective in these type of things. But the story is
Yeah.
much more complex in the second part. I think that everyone can agree about that. There's much more factions. There's an actual world building, something that was not really present in the first part, which was more linear, as you pointed. But
Yeah, we
let's
saw
not
it at the end, but it wasn't throughout.
yeah, let's not forget that Chainsaw Man blew up because of its first part, and its second part only exists because its first part was amazing. And I am all for the mangaka's creativity to express himself, to do things that he thinks is right. And I completely think that Fujimoto is doing a masterclass, a masterpiece with the second part. If he takes his time, he doesn't rush it, and he keeps going the way he's been going, I think it will be as equally amazing than the first part, or even better. I would think it has potential to be better. But right now, it just seems that I don't have this attachment to Chainsaw Man that I had with the first part. And something that's been shared a lot of times is that it's starting to feel like Chainsaw Man doesn't feel like Chainsaw Man anymore, and we just get remembered of Chainsaw Man through Denji, but the rest of the cast is dead. It's like rebooting a manga, if you see what I mean. It's like the manga was rebooted. All the characters that we've seen, all those that existed, we didn't see much of them in the first part. And
Yeah.
now I know it's their time to shine, it's their time to do this. But I just wish Chainsaw Man ended at its first part, to be honest. I just wish it was left like
Okay.
that.
Okay. Let me address those. So first of all, I think what makes Chainsaw Man feel Chainsaw Man to me is Fujimoto's style of writing, which is kind of this balance between like absurdity and also like really deep themes. I fell in love with Chainsaw Man not because of power or because Makima. I actually the reason I stuck around for Chainsaw Man, and Chainsaw Man is the first manga I ever read. Like when I watched the anime,
Really?
I was actually really interested in the
Is it
idea
your
of
first
like
manga ever?
yeah, I watched the anime and I was like, oh, this guy's a genius because like what it's actually talking about is Denji and Aki were like opposites, but they had the same situation. Like they both had their family struck from them, and Aki became this brooding, I'm not happy until I get my revenge, and Denji just wanted toast. And yet Denji was the happy one. And so Fujimoto is saying to us like, guys, you have to choose happiness. And like you can like choose to be Aki and be like collapsed by your past and be consumed by it, or you can choose toast because life is hard and life sucks and there's nothing invalid about wanting to just like go after boobs or something. Like when Denji says to the leech devil, which is such a crazy sentence to say. And this is part of the thing about the absurdity. Like you say these sentences and they sound crazy, but they actually are really well written. When
Yeah.
Denji says to the leech devil, like everyone has these deep goals and everyone says I'm stupid, but like what I'm not stupid. Like I'm having a good time. And like that's what I fell in love with. It wasn't like power, like I like that stuff. It's aesthetic stuff. But honestly, I like Asa more than I like power. Like I when I first read that first Asa chapter, like immediately it was like, you know, I fell in love with her because I was like, "Oh, Asa is someone I can really relate to, but also that absurdism is baked into her because she's so inept socially that it's actually as absurd as what power does. Like it's actually ridiculous. And I'm like, "Oh, that's so relatable." Like when she falls on that fucking chicken and it dies, I'm like, "That's me. That's me." Like and I think a lot of
I
people
can
had that
relate to
experience.
this.
Yeah. It's like,
The-
"Oh,
okay, and you
and you
that is totally right. I'm gonna go again on the Reddit thing on Twitter as well. X now, basically. People have been praising how Aza is basically so relatable. She's just so
yeah.
relatable as a character. Because like it's as if Fujimoto had a teenager daughter or something like that. He's just so good at writing her. Asa is really good, and one reason why she's that I appreciate reading second part is because of her as well. She's very written and everything, and you're completely
Yeah.
right on that. But maybe it's more of a personal thing. It's a personal attachment
It
that I have
might
to these
be. Yeah.
characters.
I think it also might be I'm older. Like I'm
Yeah,
older than a lot
yeah.
of the Chainsaw Man fan base. And like I'm like an adult now and
Let's
like
remind
the
people
wackiness.
the age difference of your age and my age. Okay, I just turned 18 basically. And how old are you?
I'm like I'll say I'm between the ages of like 22 and 27 or something like that. Like I'm around that age.
Okay.
And so like I think yeah, I think I'm sort of in I guess more like when I talk to a lot of the Chainsaw Man people, I'm like, "Oh, it's a really young crowd." And I'm glad to see that people are like taking an interest in a story with like so much depth. But I think a lot of it when I hear what people say is like they want stuff that like keeps their interest and is like more zany. And like they're like, "Oh, that's what made Chainsaw Man Chainsaw Man." I'm like, "No. What makes Chainsaw Man is actually the absurdity like contrasted with the actual like depth of character. Like that's actually the basis of Chainsaw Man. And we haven't lost that. The one thing I'll grant you is sometimes the art is confusing. Like we talked about, that I'll get like I don't think anyone's really arguing. I don't think it's as bad as people say. Like I don't mind if like a random
I think the
panel
fact
isn't
that
as like
people are a bit
detailed.
frustrated about other things and just they find the art is something everyone agrees on, so they just exaggerate a bit on
Yeah.
it. So yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes I'm like, okay, you guys are going overkill. Like there's a little bit of a drop, but like not always. Also, I think people are being a little uncharitable because also like when we talk about our favorite moments about Chainsaw Man, where it's like Aki becoming the gun fiend,
Mm-hmm.
Power's birthday cake. Like when was that in the series? That was like volume 10, 9 and 10.
Exactly,
And it's
exactly.
like
The
where are we?
second part is just beginning, kinda. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I
It's
mean it's
beginning.
like early middle, right?
Yeah,
And like
it's not even middle right now. The equivalent
so in
would be
part
which
1
part?
we sorry, say that one more time.
The equivalent to part one in part. I mean, the equivalent of in part one. What would it be? What
E-
arc?
It'd be the beginning of the Assassin's arc, something like
Mm,
that.
yeah,
And so I actually think we're in a similar place where things are heating up. Like
yeah.
there's
I
multiple factions. There's, you know,
and I
it
think that we're
it
going to
feels
something
similar.
interesting here because it's here that Fujimoto needs to prove. I mean, he has proved that he knows how to word build. He has proved that he knows
Yeah,
how to write a good story. And second, part two has been about that. I think that the action scenes were a bit disappointing to me, but the other part of the world building, the characterization, as you said, were amazing. But now I need Fujimoto to prove that he still knows how to write fucking Chainsaw Man going crazy berserk. I want to see berserk Chainsaw Man right now. I want to see things go wild. I want to see an explosion on my paper. Like the moment when I was reading Chainsaw Man weekly and it arrived to the moment of the Darkness Devil. This was I never felt like this in
yeah,
a manga. And even those people who didn't actually read it weekly, they will always say that this moment with the Darkness Devil was so like impactful to them and in the story, but also memorable. It's such a memorable moment. And if you ask me, I could tell you everything that happened in part two, but I can't tell you something that was as memorable or as, I would say, even in the beginning of Chainsaw Man, you had memorable moments. The kiss with Reze, the other parts that were before the International Assassin arc were amazing. But in the second part, I just feel like, you know, when movies that do well, they make a second part? Like,
yeah.
there's something that the first movie, even though it's maybe it has less budget, it has less of these things, it just feels more complete. And it just feels like more iconic in a certain sense. I
I
feel
think
like
part one pops more. It is more
yeah,
iconic.
part
I will
one,
say,
complete is not the right word. Iconic, yeah, was the word I wanted to use.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I will say that I think you're right there. I think there are iconic things. Like I thought the Falling Devil, like the things that pop in my mind are very different in part two than in part one. And
because
like they're
part two doesn't
iconic to
shine for
me,
its
but
action, right? I wouldn't say that
I
part two shines for its action. That's a take I would have.
yeah.
I don't know what you think about
Like
it.
my favorite scenes, so my favorite scenes is when those two couples are talking to each other and then they walk off the balcony.
Yeah, that
Like
was
that's such an
so.
iconic scene for me.
That was
Um,
that's more of a psychological scene. It's almost psychological
yeah,
horror. It's not even like it's not even an action scene because I was kind of like the falling devil. Uh, I wasn't really surprised or like hyped about it as much as people were. I don't know why. Maybe
yeah.
I kind of lost interest midway in the fight. I don't know why. I didn't feel like the stakes were that high for this fight. I really don't know why. But I just felt like as I couldn't die right now or Denji, whatever, they would just win. But in the first part of Chainsaw Man, I
People
had
died.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, people actually died. Do you see what I mean?
I
People actually
think
died. Like,
I
they
think part
died.
2 has less characters and like there is something I think he's going deeper into those characters, but I think there is a sense that those characters like have a little more plot armor. Now, I'm not going to like say that is or is not true, but I can understand why someone would feel like that.
I would say
Yeah.
that in the
I
first part of Chainsaw Man, it was okay to kill characters because it showed how brutal the world was. It showed how like demonic the devils were and how like ruthless they were. For example, in the the bomb girl arc or whatever you call that one, uh, is like you had so many deaths happen and such in a brutal way. At some point, Riz holds like the head of some public safety guy, and it's just
yeah.
so brutal. It's so gritty. The
Yeah.
second part, I just don't give a shit about people dying. I'm gonna be completely honest. I really don't care. Like I see because I know that Fujimoto is focusing on characterization, right? Therefore, he can't just kill a character like that. And that's the thing.
Yeah, I guess
Is
to
it
me
is it
like
yeah,
I didn't forget that the devils are brutal. Like I don't need him to keep proving that to me, especially when like the whole world is being ravaged. Like I think there is a like I get the sense that it's not Game of Thronesy anymore where like your favorite character
exactly,
could die
exactly.
any week. But I don't necessarily know if
But I
that's
need my
always a
adrenaline
weakness.
when reading, and I think that most people as well think like they need that feeling. It's the thing with Jujutsu Kaisen. I'm gonna like stay awake for the leaks, and I'm just because I am so scared about a character dying. But I will say that Jujutsu Kaisen is not as well written as Chainsaw Man. It's not the
Yeah,
same
Jujutsu
medium.
Kaisen is Chainsaw Man for babies.
No,
No
that's
offense.
that's a criminal take, guys. I do not agree
That's
with
a
that. I would say that
No, I mean
no,
like
that's a criminal take. We need to
it
put the
is a
music.
criminal take, but it's true.
You know why it is a criminal take? Because you didn't finish Jujutsu Kaisen. You're not up to date.
Yeah,
That
I've watched like okay, let me critique Jujutsu Kaisen compared to Chainsaw Man and tell me where like I'm wrong. I
okay,
think
guys.
Jujutsu Kaisen's like magic is like seems broken to me. Like it seems very like Goku power level esque. Like it has a little more pizzazz to it, but it's a little broken. I also think the characters are sort of boring. I think their aesthetics and action carry them a lot more. And I also think that he does a lot of tell don't show. Like he has
Yeah,
the characters like announce what they're doing. Well, in Chainsaw Man, you learn what these people are capable of through the action, through what they do. He rarely just tells you what's going to happen. And so what I mean like for babies, it's like yeah, the world building is dumbed down a little bit, like the writing is dumbed down a little bit. Like it's more told to you directly. You don't have to infer anything.
because
And, you know,
I agree with your analysis, but what believe makes it wrong is the fact that Chainsaw Man is like not the same genre as Jujutsu Kaisen. Jujutsu Kaisen is a battle shonen, literally a battle shonen. You can't categorize Chainsaw Man the same way you did with Jujutsu Kaisen. Jujutsu Kaisen is like Hunter x Hunter. It's a battle shonen with a power system. You have to explain the powers, and I think there's a lot. You said it's more like they tell a lot. They show. What did you say? They show don't tell, right? Like
well, show don't tell is what you should do. Tell don't
yeah, but you
show
said
is
the
what
Jujutsu
Gege
Kaisen does
does.
the contrary. Yeah, I think that that's because you didn't go in the further parts. The parts become
Yeah,
much more
that might be
vague.
true.
They become much more vague and open to interpretation. And one of the strengths of Jujutsu Kaisen is the ability that how it's easy to theorize about Jujutsu Kaisen and discuss about it. Much more, it's so much easier than for example Chainsaw Man, because Chainsaw Man
Yeah.
themes are really themes that are, I wouldn't say like niche or like something like that. It's just themes that are not
They're
as
deep.
relatable. They're deep. They're deep. They're deep. And Jujutsu Kaisen is a battle shonen, but you get some really deep ideas for Jujutsu Kaisen. It's just that
I'm
it's
not
more
saying you
shonen
don't.
like. And
Yeah, but I just find it when it's like a knock 'em up robots for most of it. Like to me, that's more like okay, maybe this is me being like too much of a what is it called, a snob. Like, but I think like when I see stuff where it's kind of like battle shonens, I kind of think, okay, this is for like kind of kids. Like it can be good and I can enjoy it, but it's more like, like it's not intellectually engaging for me. It's kind of I'm like, okay, yeah, like and I like the fight scenes. Like when I watch Jujutsu Kaisen like fight scenes, I'm like, this is fucking sick. There's nothing
yeah.
wrong with liking Jujutsu Kaisen. It just when I say it's for babies, I mean like it doesn't take like an you don't have to think it through and I think one of the reasons that Chainsaw Man is not as popular right now is because right now it's a lot more you got to think it through, you got to analyze it, and that's what makes it interesting. And it's like, well, I like JJK because they, like do cool stuff more often. And so I think that's what I mean like for babies. Like I'm obviously being a little like tongue in cheek with that, but I think the point still stands that it's like, it's a little less developed.
Yes, but something that I would say though is that Jujutsu Kaisen has focused on world building in the further parts after the Shibuya incident, which I don't know if you've been up to there. Where have you
No,
stopped
I'm
in
not.
Jujutsu Kaisen? So yeah, you really
I watched
you
like every other episode in season one, and I was like horribly
yeah.
uninterested in
No, no, no. Because Jujutsu
it.
Kaisen starts after this. It really starts after this. And it's something that you're not the only one to think that. Therefore, I think we can conclude about the Jujutsu Kaisen, like a little thing, is that he hasn't read Jujutsu Kaisen.
I
He's
need
not up
to
to
I need
date.
to read more. Fair enough.
And
Fair enough.
and everyone actually who hasn't read the Shibuya incident and is up to date would think the same. So it's not really a criminal take. It's just you didn't read the whole manga. So we can close this short thing, and let's go back to Chainsaw Man now, and
Yeah.
let's try to. I think we're closing the 1 hour for this episode. Let's
Yeah.
have
Let's round it
some.
out.
Yeah, let's do it. So I'll let you start.
Okay, so I think overall, like if I had to summarize my position, it's just that like Chainsaw Man has got a little more intimate. It's got a little more heady. I think a lot of it is that the characters don't have like that zany, crazy personality, and so like people aren't as interested. But like I think Asa, Nayuda, even Fami, and personally, I'm like a what is it, Yoshi Goat or whatever they call him. Like I love Yoshida. I think he's a great character. I think
Yoshi
like
Goat.
people should really I think people should really take more time to think about these characters. And, like, instead of being mad that there are weeks in between the chapters and things aren't as fast, like, go get a hobby, read something else in the meantime.
Go
Like,
touch
just because
grass,
it's not fast paced doesn't mean it's not good. Touch the grass. It's okay. Um,
guys.
and,
It's
like,
it's his takes. It's not mine. Please don't hate. Like, you can go hate him.
like just give it a chance, like and accept that it's going to be a little different. Like I didn't want part 1 and part 2 to be the same. I'm glad that Fujimoto is changing and like yeah, that change is going to isolate a lot of the what I perceive to be more of the classic shonen audience. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we should make things for fans. I think we should make them as best as possible, and if that
Yeah,
means less
manga
people get
remains
it,
art.
then
Uh,
I don't
art,
care. Like
yeah,
there's a lot
art,
of people with the
yeah.
reading
That's the thing. What I would say is that manga. I know I'm agreeing with you, basically, man. Don't get
yeah.
mad. I'm agreeing with you.
Oh, I'm
So,
not. No, this is my like manifesto. I'm talking to the Chainsaw Man fan base right now. This is
you
like my.
you calm down. You don't insult the Chainsaw Man fan base. They're gonna fuck you up like the Travis Scott video, bro.
Oh no, dude, my 2000 dislike or whatever it is video. Ah
Bro's
man,
like to
no, I
dislike
think
ratio is insane.
yeah, like I'm okay shredding the people who have been taken over by the reading comprehension devil. It's fine. I don't mind losing those people. I hope everyone stays around, but if you leave because it's too boring for you, it is what it is, man. Like I don't read stuff because other people do. I read it because I think it's good, and I think Chainsaw Man Part 2 is good. So that's my summary of why all my thoughts on like what we've been talking about summarized. What are your
Oh,
final thoughts? Address the Chainsaw Man fan base.
my dear
Rally the
Chainsaw Man.
troops.
Yeah, I need to say something. My fault is that all that Chainsaw Man is undergoing through an identity crisis, much like Denji is undergoing that. I think that there's something about this whole identity. What makes Chainsaw Man Chainsaw Man? And we need to accept change in the way that the second part was not going to be the same as the first part, else it would just be called the first part, not the second part. There's no why separate things, right? But I do agree that there are some points that can't be neglected, such as the art. I am a bit conflicted about the pacing, of course, but I
Yeah.
think that we came to the conclusion that the pacing, it's the author's choice. We need to think about the fact that making a manga is really impactful on the health of someone. It can be really dangerous to just overwork yourself.
Mm.
You get all these hand things, you can get tendinitis, all these kind of things, And we've seen mangakas being burned out. Togashi from Hunter x Hunter, where he just has this condition where he can't make mangas, and he's one of the best, if not the best, shonen writer of all time. If that's not Fujimoto's place, that's for another episode, okay? Don't start arguing with me. But what I'm just saying here is that we need to let things flow. We need to understand that things are not going to be the same. Much like everything in life, we evolve. Fujimoto has evolved. He has shifted his art style constantly throughout the first part, and his art style has evolved. We've seen it through his one-shots. If you compare the first part of Chainsaw Man through the one-shots and the second part, it's completely different. Also, Fujimoto has lost some of his assistants as well, which may explain the art problem. So he's doing much more of his things
Yeah.
himself. So some panels may look unrefined and a bit janky. It's completely normal. And I just believe that we haven't seen we need to think outside of the weekly release. We need to think that maybe, there is a bigger picture there. Chainsaw Man is not finished. It's still ongoing. We're still at the beginning. We're entering the middle of the story. We're not even in the middle of the
That's my
story.
line.
That's your line, but
No, I'm
the
just
thing,
messing with you.
that's your line. But that's your line. That's a good point. That means that
Yeah.
you that I'm becoming a Chainsaw Man lover. I was a hater at the beginning. Now I'm a lover, guys. No, I'm just kidding. I
Yeah.
always loved Chainsaw Man. I just have this kind of like some negative points that haven't really changed about the art and the pacing. But just
Yeah, no,
think,
that makes sense.
yeah, let's just think outside the box and just say, guys, it's no big deal. Just wait 2 weeks. Go touch grass. I agree with what Criminal says. But there's
Yeah,
something that I wanted to address last but not least as well, is that we need to understand that Fujimoto has never been someone that does things like other people. You see the guy's life, right? This guy is completely crazy. Some people act crazy just to be tacky or just to appear cool. Fujimoto is genuinely a crazy guy. He's completely crazy in his mind, and he's a crazy genius. And the line between a crazy guy and a genius is really thin, right? So we don't understand
Yeah.
how Fujimoto works. And the only way for us to understand how Fujimoto works is by waiting and letting him finish his part. And I'm sure that the art problem will probably not change, because I don't think that Fujimoto's main priority is his art. Because in an interview that he released, he said that he wanted to write stories but stop drawing, like the mangaka of Kaguya-sama, which actually does the story for Oshinoko. And he doesn't do the art, he lets someone else do the art. So I've seen that Fujimoto maybe has started to shift away from the visual aspects of his manga and focus more on the characters, the story so far. And Criminal, I'll let you conclude with this. What do you want to say to people who still dislike Chainsaw Man after all the reasoning we did for the second part?
You always have Dragon Ball Z, if you just want to watch, guys smash up against each other.
You got Boruto as well. Kind of nice though. I
Yeah.
love. You got
So,
One Piece.
You have One Piece, yeah. So, I mean, I don't hate those fans, if, like, it's just a form of escapism for you and you don't want to think about it, that's fine, But that's just not what Chainsaw Man is, and it never was, in my opinion. And so, after all that, I don't have much more to say. And is there any comments? I know this was streamed live. that we should respond to, or
No, no. I think it's too late. There's nobody that actually stayed on the live, or the live glitched out. I think so. No, there's no comments. There's just hellos. People saying hello, hello guys. And
well,
maybe
hello to everyone.
in the future, if that works, we could like maybe try to interact with people. But anyways, for those who watched the podcast, just share your opinion with us. What you
Yeah,
think of this second part? What do you think? Do
I,
you
I
agree with us, or either me or Criminal? Because to be honest, we don't. We're a bit conflicting on some opinions. Where we share the general, like a same overview on the manga. I think we agree with each other on many points, and we disagree on the small
yeah,
things. But
I
still,
would
let
agree
us
with
know
that.
on
Yeah, let
Chainsaw
us
Man
know
at
in the
least.
comments, and yeah, next week we might disagree on more stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's all I had. Thanks everybody for coming on.
Wait,
Again,
Criminal, do you want to explain how this podcast will run out during the weeks now? How it's gonna be, and how it's gonna work for our viewers? Maybe.
yeah, we're gonna try to do it weekly. We're gonna try
Yeah.
to have a consistent schedule. And also each week we're probably going to talk about an anime or manga topic that's going to be somewhat contentious. We're going to try to make it a little interesting and show different perspectives. Again, like all of it's lighthearted. Don't worry, guys. But we do
Our
want to
opinions
like
are our
have
own as
good.
well, right? So we don't
Yeah.
force anything onto others. We don't think that you're stupid for liking Chainsaw Man or disliking it. We don't. We want to
Yeah,
engage.
for sure.
We just want to share our opinions and also give you matter to think about, like to actually express your opinions as well. And it becomes interesting when you can actually discuss with us. Just comment whatever, and we'll be happy to argue. I'll come in my account. Criminal will also come and talk to anyone. It's just we're open to anything,
Yeah.
any opinion, and there's no such thing as dumb questions, dumb opinions, or anything like that. At least for me. And Criminal, I think, behaves the same, thinks the same like that. So yeah, don't.
Yeah, I'm
fear-
just more cheeky, maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
You know.
and he has much more criminal takes, and this is why it's named Criminal Takes, by the way. Because
Yeah, but is there anything else? Like I think we should call it just to have that clean hour right there.
it's 1 hour, is it? I didn't check.
Yeah, it's about 1 hour, yeah. And so now I'm like, this is a good stopping place. But really,
Yep.
guys, tune in next time, and yeah, I appreciate all your support. And
Thank you so much for
yeah,
watching. Bye, guys.
bye.